Thank you. Thank you so much. And nowhere is the promise of innovation greater than in American-made energy. American oil production is the highest that it's been in 8 years. We have a supply of natural gas that can last America nearly 100 years. This country needs an all-out, all-of-the-above strategy that develops every available source of American energy.
I am very firm in my conviction that the country that leads the way in clean energy, solar, wind, biodiesel, geothermal, that country is going to win the race in the 21st century global economy.
Ending our dependence on fossil fuels represents perhaps the most difficult challenge we have ever faced.
I believe that if we're serious about meeting our energy challenge, we need to operate on all cylinders.
We, it turns out, are the Saudi Arabia of natural gas. We've got a lot of it. The time has come, once and for all, for this nation to fully embrace a clean energy future. For the sake of our security, our economy, and our planet, we must have the courage and commitment to change. My administration will consider potential areas for development in the Mid and South Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico.
I'm directing the Department of Interior to conduct annual lease sales in Alaska's National Petroleum Reserve.
We have a record number of oil rigs operating right now, more working oil and gas rigs than the rest of the world combined. So do not tell me that we're not drilling. We're drilling all over this country. Climate change is a fact. And when our children's children look us in the eye and ask if we did all we could to leave them a safer, more stable world with new sources of energy, I want us to be able to say, yes, we did. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
It's a tough job being the President of the United States. In many respects, it's an impossible job, trying to keep so many different factions happy, while at the same time guarding the security and future of the country and of the world. Few things have been more volatile during this president's tenure than trying to blend our energy needs and climate future. The notion that America could become energy independent was certainly not on anyone's horizon in 2008. As a result, the president has wrestled with his energy vision.
We've got to have a sustained, all-of-the-above strategy that develops every available source of American energy.
When President Obama took office, he could not have predicted the breadth of change he'd see on the energy front. He proposed more deep water drilling, and then the BP oil rig exploded in the Gulf of Mexico. He suggested nuclear might be a part of the future, and then the plant in Fukushima flooded, leaked, and was closed. He approved drilling in the Arctic North, but it proved too risky. Early in his terms, he championed the potential of clean coal, but he ultimately has worked to shut down the entire coal industry. During these same years, alternative energy options like solar and wind have grown dramatically. Solar panels abound on rooftops and in large arrays. Windmills mix with cornfields and desert landscapes. More jobs are being created in the renewable industries than in any other energy sector. But on President Obama's watch, fracking became a household word, and 80,000 new oil and gas wells were drilled across the country. All of that cheap oil and gas wrought from the shale has filled us with false promise. Whether it be an old-style pump jack, towering natural gas drilling rig, or the relatively small footprint of tanks permanently stationed on a well pad, today, more than 17 million Americans live within a mile of at least one oil or gas well. While shale gas and oil plays have been tapped in over 30 states, the infrastructure to support distribution of all that fracked oil and gas sprawls across the country, including compressor stations, pipelines, and oil trains transporting unrefined crude coast to coast. Even states with no fossil fuel resources are forced to face the ancillary impacts of fracking, often becoming the unwilling repositories for toxic byproducts, harvested from materials like silica sand, or having fresh water removed from the hydrological cycle forever. Though the United States has a long relationship with the gas and oil industry going back more than a century, today's new extreme energy extraction gold rush may prove to be the president's most profound and possibly most damaging environmental legacy.
He came into office 2008. Things were looking peachy. Somebody on his staff, some bodies on his staff, his advisors, his energy advisor, his science advisor said, "Boy, are you lucky. You came into office at just the right time because the industry has figured out how to get a lot of gas and oil out of shale. Never thought we could do it, but now we know we can do it, and we have a lot of it. 100 years of natural gas. You are the luckiest president to ever come into office because look what we gave you."
He's trying to have it both ways. You know, please the oil and gas industry, lower energy prices by producing more oil and gas. But on the other hand, regulate the coal industry to reduce emissions. It's not that simple.
Solutions to our energy quandary are available today. But what is required is a plan, a vision, a bold leader. Last year, the world came together in Paris to define a new energy future and to agree on a plan to reduce climate-damaging emissions nation by nation. Urgency was given to the gathering by the common knowledge that this could be our last moment to act, to save much of what we hold most precious, and to pass on a planet worthy of our children. What was accomplished in Paris late in 2015 was a good start. But what now?
These are the tar balls that they're talking
As this
about.
president shapes his environmental legacy, and as the next president prepares to pick up where he's left off, we want to introduce you to some of those 17 million people across the country that have paid a price for the boom in extreme energy extraction. It is their stories that will hopefully inform and hasten our next moves toward a clean energy revolution. The negatives of fracking are causing many residents to reconsider the long-held pro-drilling mentality that once reigned in the Keystone State.
I don't see any problem with drilling. I mean, I think probably when they started drilling a number of years ago, they were not doing it well, and the wells weren't cast in a great way, and the chemicals that were going down the wells probably weren't healthy. And I mean, I'm sure that there were some issues back years and years ago, but today, drilling today and how they do it, I think they're doing it very responsibly.
When the first hydraulic fracturing operators came to Pennsylvania in the mid-2000s, they didn't take out billboards to announce the new process. Secrecy is one of the industry's primary tools. That secrecy is understandable. Fracking involves blasting millions of gallons of fresh water mixed with a toxic slurry of chemicals and sand to blow apart the shale and extract the gas trapped inside. Every frack is like a bomb a mile or two beneath the surface. The process gives operators a new, more invasive level of efficiency, allowing them to drill horizontally for miles in all directions from a single wellhead. Though fracking has existed for 60 years, this new high-tech process, high-volume hydraulic fracturing, was unlike any kind of drilling done before. It's like comparing the Wright brothers' plane to an F-15. Mid-sized companies based in Texas and Oklahoma with names like Cabot, Chesapeake, and Noble became the state's fastest-growing employers. The result? Close to 10,000 new gas wells drilled across the state in just a few years.
It snuck up on us, and we weren't really paying attention. This came on in the last 10 years very, very quickly, and it took a good long time for the citizens who were going to have to live with that fracking to catch up with it. Pennsylvania is a perfect example of they were really stampeded.
Bradford and Susquehanna County had the two best air qualities in the state of Pennsylvania before this started. Now, Bradford County and Susquehanna County's got the two worst quality of air in the whole state of Pennsylvania. We're a rural farmland area. We don't have any heavy industry up here. We don't have any big factories. It's just all countryside. They're all around us, really. We have quite a few within a 2 or 3 mile radius of us, about 9 or 10 of them, I think. After a year after we moved into here, one day all of a sudden our water turned all gray and our neighbor's water turned all gray, and our well filled with methane and turned black, and our well was actually erupting like a geyser because there was so much methane in it. And our levels had went from 38.9 milligrams per liter, which the saturation point in water is 25 or 28 milligrams per liter. So anything beyond that, water can't hold it anymore and it escapes. So our second test, our levels had went up to 58.9. So they had
58.4.
58.4.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good thing you're good with all those numbers, because
I mean, this place is spoiled now. I can't leave it. Am I going to leave it to my kids for what? So they can keep hauling water the rest of their lives? The government can have it back. They want it so goddamn bad. That's what it seems like to me.
You know, here you are, you're using water as the club to smash apart the bedrock, to get oil or gas out of it. On its journey down to the shale and back up again, it's picked up a lot of naturally occurring toxic chemicals that are trapped in the shale. And these can be heavy metals, these can be radioactive substances, and these can be other hydrocarbons, things like benzene, which we know with certainty is a carcinogen. And so all of these toxic chemicals that had been safely trapped in the shale a mile or more below our feet, where they're not going to hurt anybody, are now exhumed and brought to the surface.
Well, you asked about test results and chemicals and everything else. Well, Sonny, here you go. Four different grades of uranium in my water, 3 grades of thorium, strontium, manganese, arsenic. The list just goes on and on and on. We're idiots, we're liars, we're just trying to get money out of the industry and everything else. All I want is my water back.
This is rural America, it's country. And because of sparse population, we're a marginalized subpopulation, and our lives are not valued as much as people living in dense areas like a city. we're disposable. My life is disposable. And that's really difficult to fight because you can't go back and change. To change the regulations, the FERC regulations, you need legislators, and for this county, it's basically a done deal.
Natural gas has me very optimistic about the future.
Natural gas has much less CO2 than coal or oil and costs less too.
Using natural gas to support more renewable energy
makes sense for the climate.
With the gas industries in the area, the sky is the limit.
Pennsylvania's natural gas, ready to fuel our future today and tomorrow.
It sounded so good, and particularly with natural gas, because everyone wanted to do something about climate change.
People are trying to figure out how they're going to get enough carbon out of the atmosphere to make the United States work and to keep the economy going.
And the idea was burning natural gas produces lower CO2 emissions than burning coal.
This notion of a bridge, that we'd have to continue to use natural gas as a supposedly cleaner fossil fuel to get us to the green renewable future, is a ludicrous analogy. As a civil engineer, believe me, I know bridges. Usually a bridge is built from a place where you are to a place where you want to get, so you don't fall into a place you don't want to be. So a place you don't want to be is using fossil fuels. So the notion is you build a bridge out of a fossil fuel to get over the use of fossil fuels. Excuse me, that analogy just is inept.
So if we suddenly have an abundance of natural gas, well, we can switch from burning coal to burning natural gas. It'll be good for the environment. So you get to have jobs, you get to have more natural gas production, and you get to paint yourself as an environmentalist all at the same time. How good can it get?
How good can it get? For 4 months, starting in late 2015, a broken 3-inch gas pipe located 8,500 feet below ground in suburban Los Angeles leaked, spewing an invisible to the eye cloud of methane into the air. Thanks to special infrared images calibrated to show gas emissions, we can see just how bad it was. Before it was finally plugged, the leak resulted in 5 billion cubic feet of methane being released into the atmosphere, the equivalent of the yearly emissions from all of California's oil refineries combined. Pound for pound methane, over a 20-year time frame, is 80 to 100 times more powerful than carbon dioxide as a contributor to the blanket of chemicals in the atmosphere helping to heat up the planet. The leak at Porter Ranch garnered international press because of its magnitude. But perhaps its most powerful impact was reminding us just how much methane leaks across the country every day, from every gas and oil field, delivery truck and train, pipeline, compressor station, and municipality. To be clear, you cannot drill for gas without releasing methane.
According to the best available analysis available in the peer-reviewed public literature, the use of natural gas as a substitute for coal for electricity generation only has a positive benefit for climate change if the leak rate is less than about 2.7%. But we now know that the national leak rate is far higher than 2.7%, which means the dirtiest fossil fuel right now, the one that's accused of being the dirtiest, the one that the Obama administration literally is trying to get off the table with its proposed clean power plant, coal, is better than natural gas. Natural gas is the dirtiest from a climate change point of view. That's what the science is saying right now.
Perhaps no one is as familiar with the downsides of fossil fuel extraction than the residents of West Virginia. Coal is king here, recoverable beneath 43 of the state's 55 counties. With the new coal production restrictions put into place by the Obama administration in an effort to reduce carbon dioxide pumping into the atmosphere, West Virginia was a perfect place to frack. The cozy relationship between the fossil fuel industry and the state's politicians extends further back than the memory of any current West Virginian, as does a ferocious cycle of huge corporate profits and a decimated environment spun around by a labor force desperate for jobs.
Lee Raymond was once quoted, the former CEO of ExxonMobil. He said that presidents come and go. Exxon is basically like a country.
Like, I woke up this morning, looked out my window, and sat down and cried for 5 minutes. Because I knew this was coming. I tried to talk to a lawyer. You're going to have to pay for a lawyer. You just can't do anything. You just feel like your hands are tied and you can't do anything. I mean, when they say we shouldn't be angry, but I don't understand, because if you lose your quality of life and you're afraid that your water is contaminated and you're afraid to grow vegetables in your garden and you've already went through everything to eliminate everything that could be bad for your kids, and then everything's left is still all the big issues: water, air, soil, schools, getting your kids back and forth to schools. It's not, in 5 years, it's went from almost heaven to fracking hell. That's what it has. That's what it is. That's what it is. That's what it's become.
Rather than fair wages, stable employment, and a high quality of life, West Virginians instead have witnessed the industrialization of their rural state. Like other states whose economies depend on the process of exhuming what nature has buried deep underground, West Virginians are among the unhealthiest and the poorest in the nation, second only to Mississippi for lowest income per capita.
This is your classic resource extraction, third world, underdeveloped country model being wrought on America. Companies come in and say, oh, sign on the dotted line, everything's gonna be fine. Boom, you're done. Your land is theirs. They can come over, they take over, they toxify where you are. And then later they cancel your royalty payments because they decide to tax you on the pipeline to transport your gas. You can't trust these people. They're trying to perpetuate a system that doesn't help the planet, that doesn't help our environment, that causes us enormous amount of problems in terms of public health, and has also a huge hand in taking the democracy away from Americans. We are not living in a democracy at the current time, and the oil and gas industry has a lot to do with that.
We came from Saginaw, Michigan. One day I was driving down the road trying to find a job, and my grandpa called me and said, why don't you come out North Dakota? I seen an ad on TV. So I called up all the boys and said, hey, let's go to North Dakota. Let's go do oil. They're making $20, $30 an hour starting out. Got here late one night, crashed at a Walmart parking lot. And just from there, just put out jobs, and we were hired 3 days later. It's unbelievable out here.
The energy industry has always been a boom and bust business. For a few short years, the fracking boom turned North Dakota into the go-to state for industrial jobs: truck driving, construction, rig working. And the economy went into overdrive.
What drew me here was my husband. We had a hard time finding jobs and working in Las Vegas, where we were from. Like, within a week, he found a job. I started my company called Black Gold Tees. There's shirts for all the jobs here: pipeliners, roughnecks, roustabouts, riggers, whatever. Drillers, loving life as an oil-filled wife, because there are so many of us here, and I've sold so many of these because of that. We've got it all. It's overwhelming how many people are here. because you don't see them all the time, but you see all the housing, you see all the construction always happening.
Jobs were in such demand that in 2009, the cost of renting a one-bedroom apartment in Williston, North Dakota was higher than in New York City or San Francisco. Behind the flow of fossil fuel and its promise of financial freedom, workers with big dreams and families in tow poured into North Dakota from every state and from around the globe, all hoping to cash in.
We get different nationalities down here. We get like people from Sudan, Ethiopia, Sierra Leone, Ghana, Kenya. We get a lot of African people here.
I came to Williston, North Dakota to look for a job, to be able to take care of my kids because it's getting tough to get a job. And my goal is to work enough and save enough money and go back to Liberia and start my business.
Hoping for probably like 2-3 months from now, I decide to go into the oil field. And I already get my application out there, so that's where the money is. You can work other jobs around here. You're not going to make according to what you're going to make in the oil field for 2 weeks.
One of the number one reason for people migrating from Africa to come to the United States or any part of the world to the United States is for a better life. It's for the American dream, as they call it. As we all know in life, everything has advantages and disadvantages. As much as these oil field jobs are helping a lot of lives, it has some disadvantages.
It is another brutal day for America's financial markets. The Dow is getting hammered as the price of oil continues to drop lower.
Crude is now below $30 a barrel. The plummeting price sending shockwaves around the globe during a time.
Today, so many new wells have been drilled across the U.S. that production of oil and gas is far outstripping demand. The result is that oil prices have dropped to new lows, and oil field operators in Williston are shutting down rigs, laying off workers, even declaring bankruptcy. Once again, boom towns are going bust.
I think a lot of folks in Williston can see the writing on the wall, and they know that, you know, they're going to be able to make a little more money for the next few months, but after that, you know, it's basically all over.
Well, we see what we've often seen in the history of the oil and gas industry, and that's overproduction. And then what we see is a collapse of prices.
People whose lives depend on work in the oil and gas industry are going to have to find other work.
And the people who are benefiting, the hotel owners and the restaurant owners and the truck drivers and the day laborers and the construction crews, all of which were indirectly benefiting from this boom.
On top of the slowdown in production, the industry is simultaneously facing another looming and immediate problem: the health of its workers. These oil field jobs are fleeting. Often the highest paying positions are imported from out of state, while only the cheapest labor is sourced locally. Worse, it is the workers at the bottom of the ranks who are most at risk of injury. Being around all those chemicals, violent explosions, and heavy machinery has taken a toll.
I would say that every worker that we've talked to has started off being very gung-ho. They've really go into it and they love the industry. They love what they're doing. And then with time, things start to change. They start seeing people being injured. So with time, at least some of the people that we have interviewed have changed their mind and left the industry because of that. Some of them have left with serious illnesses. Others have left before they got sick.
I am a CDL driver. I've been working in the industry for 6 to 7 years. I've done anything and everything you could possibly think of when it comes to driving a truck for the industry. Production water is the water that's left over after the frac. And whenever the gas comes up out of the well, it brings that water up with it. So once the tanks get to a certain point, we come out in a vacuum truck, hook up our hoses, and pull the water out. If you haul gasoline, if you haul acid, you haul anything over the road, DOT makes you have a hazmat endorsement on your license. You have to know what you're carrying. You have to understand what happens if you have an accident or what happens if you have a leak. As far as the oil field, they just consider it as water. It doesn't matter. You're okay. It doesn't matter if you spill it on the ground. It doesn't matter if it blows out of the top of the tank. You know, they're taking this water and shoving it down another hole somewhere else. Because if I would have known most of this stuff when I first started, I probably would have wore a mask or rubber gloves or, you know, been more careful with the stuff that I hauled around.
My teeth, I pulled my own. I pulled that one 2 weeks ago. Those are my teeth, man. Okay? I shouldn't lose all my teeth in a year. They quit paying for everything. So naturally, it's not their fault. Okay, those chemicals are safe. Ask them, they'll tell you.
Since day one, they never told you safety measures. There was no safety meetings. There was no respirators. And I was running a vac truck, a baby bottle, water truck, and cleaning up what they sprayed off these mats. Because that was what they said around the wellhead. So in 2 days, I was standing in the stuff anywhere from 28 to 30 some hours. These are all the pictures for the last 2 years. Them's all burning welts. It's like being put on, someone sets you on fire that nobody can put you out. That's one of them days where you're contemplating whether to stay on this planet or leave it, because you're in so much pain. You realize all that stuff showing on the outside, what damage is it doing on the inside? In the last 2 years, there's 20 times that was life-threatening to go to the ER. I've seen over 52 different doctors. None of them will tell you what it is.
Even though some of the science is still unsettled, the ethical question that emerges then is, what do you do in the face of scientific uncertainty? In the field of public health, we want good data, but we also, it's by definition an advocacy science. We protect people first and foremost. And so, to my way of thinking, we now have enough evidence on the harms of fracking and enough troubling signs to push the pause button. The most important thing is to keep people out of harm's way while the wheels of scientific proof-making keep grinding on.
It's not just workers who get sick. Across the country in the states where fracking is done, neighbors of drilling cite the same complaints over and over. Headache, nausea, severe asthma, and breathing problems. Living in the gas patch, whether as a worker or neighbor of a drilling rig, puts you directly in harm's way. Yet amazingly, in many communities, drilling is allowed next to schools, churches, even hospitals.
Joey? Okay, so we are entering Firestone, Colorado, a place where I lived for 2 years with 75 wells, active wells, oil and gas wells around my house. Weld County only has about 260,000 people, and we have over 21,000 active oil and gas wells. So it comes out to about 1 oil and gas well per 4 homes. Right here, we're approaching a playground. that this kindergarten school uses, and there's an active well pad right here. This well pad is roughly 300 feet away from this children's playground. Most of the people that I talk to in this area think that these tanks hold water, when in fact they hold toxic industrial liquid waste. Tons of hydrocarbon vapors are being released right now and go into the environment. The children that are playing in that playground right there are subject to this heavy industry and all of their toxic emissions that are being released. This is not uncommon in Colorado, though. Colorado, we have roughly 52,000 active oil and gas wells. And the state knows that roughly 4,000 of these active oil and gas wells are in really close proximity to homes, public playgrounds, hospitals, daycares, putting the health and welfare of the citizens in danger. These types of things should never happen in residential areas. There's no moral conscience that the industry is putting these so close to our children in our neighborhoods.
In Colorado, we've had fracking bans pass at a referendum level in many, many towns, including Boulder, Colorado Springs, Broomfield, Longmont. The people know what this means to them, and they ban it, and it moves forward on that level. Again, in Colorado, Governor Hickenlooper is suing those towns for passing their own democratic referendum, saying that they can't keep the oil and gas industry out.
We now must turn our full attention to defeating these ballot measures, and I know that the industry, the business community, the vast majority of elected officials, both Republican and Democrat across the entire state of Colorado, are united in opposition.
It's outrageous. I mean, this is a Democratic governor, not the governor of Texas, the governor of the tipping point state in Obama's election in 2012. The Democratic Party is unfortunately rallying with the gas industry in many, many places against the citizens, in many cases against the people who voted for them.
What is a more fundamental American right than to feel safe in your own home? And people are prepared to fight for that. Like, people are fighting for their homes. And for the ordinary American citizens, their home is their biggest asset. And home values across the country are being devastated by fracking events.
Many in the U.S. claim we live in an over-regulated society. When it comes to environmental laws, we have lots of good ones, but far too often they are ignored or circumvented.
When I investigate a potential public health problem, let's say a plastics factory has blown up near my hometown. That's a true story. The first place I would go is the toxics release inventory to see what kind of emissions this facility is putting out. I would also take a look at accident reports and so forth. That's not available to us who are doing the research on the health impacts of fracking because of federal exemptions to various key provisions of our environmental laws. So making it science have to operate with one hand tied behind its back. That's just not how we do things.
The so-called Halliburton loophole, named for Dick Cheney, who ran the giant oil company that developed fracking technology before he became vice president, is the prime example. Just a few sentences slipped into the more than 1,500-page Energy Policy Act of 2005 permit hydraulic fracturing operators to openly violate the requirements of the Safe Drinking Water Act and also exempt the same companies from disclosing what chemicals they inject into the land. That simple paragraph snuck in with little fanfare as a twisted legalese that allowed fracking to begin, and boom. It was these flawed laws that President Obama inherited when he took office.
It's a tragedy of the Obama administration. The EPA has the authority and the mandate to solve these problems, to protect people from the oil industry. And people overwhelmingly support clean air and clean water and use of laws like the Clean Air Act to protect people and reduce greenhouse and other pollution.
In several instances during President Obama's administration, EPA investigations have verified claims of groundwater contamination caused by fracking, most notably in Pennsylvania, Wyoming, and Texas. The agency has halted or terminated each of these investigations and has refused to address the continuing problems.
I think the industry is scared of science, and I think that the science on the table is looking worse and worse for them. You know, they were able to hide for a long time behind the claim that there is no proof that fracking ever caused drinking water contamination. Well, they can no longer wave that flag. It's very clear now that we have confirmed cases of drinking water contamination in at least 4 states.
The third most powerful earthquake in Oklahoma's recorded history jolted the northern part of the state this weekend. The magnitude 5.1 quake centered near Fairview was felt in 7 states overall.
The ground keeps shaking in Oklahoma and more violently. This year already 140 quakes, 3.0 or larger, an average of 2.5 per day. Before 2008, the average was 1.5 per year.
The nationwide explosion of fracking resulted in a variety of problems no one could have predicted. One was what to do with those billions of gallons of toxic wastewater pumped back out of the ground. Some went to lined pits and landfills, some were illegally dumped straight onto the ground or into waterways. Today, much of it is injected back deep into the ground in separate wells. Perhaps the most unusual and unexpected side effects of all this high-pressure injection are earthquakes. Oklahoma is the epicenter. Billions of gallons of wastewater have been pumped into more than 4,000 wells. Since the fracking boom began, communities from Ohio to Texas are threatened by tremors never felt before.
The first really big one that we had, my husband was asleep. I was up watching TV. I just turned off the TV, and the bed shook and hit the wall. The picture was moving. The windows were rattling. My husband woke up and thought maybe he was just having a dream, and I told him no, it wasn't a dream. And it just seems like it's getting worse. Every day now we're having an earthquake, and I wouldn't be surprised if we were sitting here and had one today, you know, during this conversation.
This whole study ended up being a report by Central Earthquake Research Institute in Memphis, Tennessee, and our local USG rep. These are all earthquakes, all these dots. All the little yellow ones are production wells. But all these circles, green, yellow, reds, those are the magnitudes of the earthquakes. I lived right here in about the middle of all the 1,400. Between the 2 injection wells that caused 80% of them. Experimented in Arkansas, in other states. I have friends in Pennsylvania, in New York, in Ohio, and where they are right now. Workers from here have been taken up there, and they're bragging about how they perfected their fracking and wastewater and recycling in Arkansas. We were the guinea pigs.
But the earthquake felt by politicians was that despite industry's boasts and predictions, there turned out to be far less gas and oil in the shale than they initially predicted.
Over the last 7 years or so, something like 80,000 wells have been drilled and fracked in tight oil and shale gas plays. We know because we did the research, because we wanted to see whether the promises that were being made for these resources were genuine, or if this was a lot of hype. And our conclusion after doing the research is it's mostly hype.
We've got a supply of natural gas under our feet that can last America nearly 100 years. Nearly 100 years. Now, when I say
What happened to that notion sold to us by the gas and oil industry and supported by politicians across the country, including President Obama, that we had 100 years of natural gas that would power us into the future? Well, it turns out those prognosticators were off by about 80 or 90 years. It also turns out that most of these new wells will exhaust 60 to 70% of their riches in the first 3 years. The result is that the shale gas fields across the U.S. imagined to be heavily laden are already tapped, their sweet spots played out.
The most recent data on production countrywide shows that there has been a slight decrease in the amount of oil being produced from shale, and a certain flattening, certainly a flattening of the amount of gas being produced from shale. The Marcellus keeps increasing. A little bit of the Utica in Ohio keeps increasing. All the other major shale gas plays are in decline.
The fact is, fossil fuels are a finite energy resource. There's only so much coal, oil, and natural gas in the ground, and we extract it using the low-hanging fruit principle. So we've already gotten all the best stuff. So if we want more oil, it's going to be polar oil, Arctic oil, deep water oil, tar sands oil from Canada, and all of those are expensive to produce and have high environmental risk.
I think there's a lot of misconception about cowboys. The ones that I've known and respected have always loved the land. That's their number one love. You can always get the cowboys to stand up to the oil company when it impacts the grass, when the water goes away, when you can't graze the animals, when you lose your wildlife. There's no cowboys that I know that don't value those things above everything else. There's nothing new about the modern cowboy. All cowboys love grass. Fracking is great. I'm glad people are concerned, but I'm afraid that it's a sexy issue that gets people to overlook the hard, non-spectacular work. No flames coming out of the creek, nobody's faucet lighting on fire. It's just some people drawing some lines on the ground and saying, we're going to drill here. And that's what you need to stop. When this field started, there was one well every 640 acres. That was the spacing. Now, up to 25 wells in that same 640 acres. Oil and gas has created a monopoly here and wiped out the ranching in this area. No more churches, no more schools here. No families live here for 13 miles. Drill, baby, drill. When do you quit? When it's all a parking lot? Then is your plan just to continue until there is no more wild land, until there's no more undisturbed land, until it's just a big North Sea platform all across the western United States?
The industry operates the same in Texas, a state with a reputation for independence and rugged individualism. Yet, even here, gas and oil has never hesitated to take what it wants, when it wants. One result of the recent boom is that communities across the country have been divided, often pitting neighbor against neighbor. A tiny fraction of people in the gas patch were paid, and paid handsomely, to lease their land for drilling. But everyone else received only the downsides of the boom: industrialization, pollution, property devaluation, and ill health. It's not just individuals who struggle with the rights and wrongs of fossil fuel extraction. Sometimes entire towns can be unwillingly put at risk thanks to conflicting zoning laws. Like here in Abita Springs, in a state typically known for being very friendly to the oil and gas industry. Greg Lemons had a long career traveling the world as a salesman before settling down in Abita Springs, where his family has lived for 6 generations. A Republican, he's been mayor for just 1 term and has taken on the oil and gas industry in a way very alien to most Louisianans.
And I heard about it on a newspaper article that's saying that there would be a fracking wells that would be put out here on our doorstep. It's the first time I heard about it, and I, was not notified by any government agencies or anything like that. I'm charged with the health and welfare of our community, and anything that jeopardizes it, I should know about it. Initially, I thought, as a being Republican, I thought it was going to be a windfall for the town of Abita Springs. So I got deep, and I picked the covers up and looked at it, and come to find out that economic benefit was pretty well smoke and mirrors. They're talking about 1 well, but there's already been 60,000 acres leased for oil and gas production. Businesses don't go out and lease that property unless they plan on doing a lot of drilling and a lot of production. The parish has zoning laws through their home rule charter, which is constitutionally protected, say that they have right to control what goes in those areas. The bad law on the books of the state of Louisiana says DNR, Department of Natural Resources, in the case of oil and gas, has that right to make that decision.
I mean, it's really a crazy proposition when you think about the argument that they're making, that they are saying under the law, we can go absolutely anywhere we want. Fill in the blank, pick your favorite beautiful place, quiet, next to your house, next to your, anywhere. Nothing is sacrosanct. They can go anywhere they want, according to their argument.
If the parish's zoning laws mean nothing, guess what? Town of Abita's zoning laws mean nothing.
So that was really frightening to people. I remember sitting at the public meeting they had in Abita Springs early on and just looking around the room and listening to the people, just shocked beyond belief that this could happen in America.
People say, well, how could that happen? Well, we have ground leases in Louisiana. We have mineral leases. So you may own the property on top of it, but you may not own the mineral leases. And if somebody has property next door to you with that fracking method, they could go for miles underneath your property, and there's nothing you can do about it.
When we think of California, the first images that pop into our heads are the ocean, beaches, mountains, organic farming, green living, beautiful people, Hollywood. Often overlooked is California's starring role as the 3rd largest producer of gas and oil in the U.S. In a state racked by record drought and still America's breadbasket, producing more than 50% of the country's fruits and vegetables, clean water is almost as valuable a commodity as oil. Almost. With the overlap of the drought and the boom in new extreme energy extraction processes, California drills 300 new wells a month. One of the most insidious meetups of oil and water is that some of the highly toxic wastewater resulting from fracking is being used to irrigate California's crops.
One thing people need to remember, all waterways are connected. Whether below ground, above ground, aquifers, rivers, one way or another, everything's connected by water. I looked into this, I realized there was no testing.
In 2015, Scott made independent tests of the water the oil companies said had been filtered of toxins before being given to farmers, often for free.
And we tested the whole 10-mile canal system. Results came back, and we started seeing solvents, chemicals of concern, that were matching up with oil that was coming out of the ground in Kern County. I was shocked when I came out here. I ended up in the middle of an almond field with the smell of oil worse than it was when I was on the ground in BP. Coelho Water Department that is taking produced water that has oil and other contamination and then using it to irrigate. This is just like in Venice, Louisiana, when I was out with fishermen in the Gulf of Mexico. It's the same thing. It's the exact same thing. You shouldn't have oil. You shouldn't have volatile chemicals in the water. It's that simple.
Both my grandfathers were farming on either side of me. I'm living here, and one grandfather's 2 miles that way, and the other one's 3 miles this way. Both my parents were raised here, and I was raised here. So farming, of course, is in my blood that way. The fact that the oil has moved into this area is a new thing. We never saw an oil well in this area when I was young. Not where the intensive farming was going on. They were separate. So we pretty much could ignore each other. Now there's conflicts between the oil companies and the farmers. We kind of have a nice system here of water coming from the mountains and very good soil, deep, nice soil. If our groundwater is contaminated, it puts a real dent in how much farming we can do. Can you irrigate crops like grapes and oranges that are full of water themselves and guarantee that chemicals in your irrigation water don't now get into those crops? It's a big unknown because nobody has ever taken the precautionary approach and say, this water has dangerous chemicals in it, so you shouldn't be irrigating with it until we know more. Nobody's even thought about whether they're contaminating food that humans eat.
It's not just clean water that suffers from all this extreme energy extraction in California. For many years, highly industrialized drilling utilizing acid, steam, and hydraulic fracturing has taken place in the heart of urban Los Angeles, mostly in working-class neighborhoods. Tankers filled with tens of thousands of gallons of acid and other chemicals pull behind these walls, just 3 feet from where people sleep, play, cook, and study. Workers pull on hazmat suits, pump chemicals into the ground, and oil and gas back out. During the process, toxic chemicals, including carcinogens and endocrine disruptors, escape into the air. No notice is given to neighbors, no warnings.
Just taking a walk, you would immediately be hit by this strong smell of, of gas. Or sometimes it was mask, it was also found that they had masking agents that would then somehow smell like, like fruity smells or
it would be like an artificial smell. Yeah.
And so even that was uncomfortable because it's like, well, why does it smell like that? In our family, there was a lot of nausea. Do you want to share?
Yeah, I would get like a lot of nosebleeds and I would be really nauseous all the time and get a lot of headaches.
The odors for this facility make our community sick, and it's not fair.
Beautiful state building and participated in our right of democracy. And we were asking for a moratorium on hydrofracking. Our thinking on this has evolved. And we're here to ask our governor to evolve along with us and use the science and use what has been taught to us by the victims and what has been taught to us by the medical community and evolve to ban fracking now.
This was really a grassroots campaign. What started around people's kitchen tables grew into the largest social movement in New York State's history.
New York State sits over the largest shale gas reserve in the U.S., and industry was desperate to start drilling. But it ran into an unexpected patchwork coalition of citizens groups that did not want to see the mostly agricultural state industrialized. Governor Andrew Cuomo was caught in the middle, pushed hard by both sides, especially the well-funded oil and gas lobbies. The fight was waged for several years while a grassroots revolution was taking hold.
I'm overjoyed today to join such an enormous crowd of New Yorkers who've come out today because we don't want fracking in New York. And on a day when all eyes in the state turn to Albany and turn to Governor Cuomo at his State of the State, we're here to remind him that we won't accept fracking and that the movement to ban fracking will never stop. We won't stop until Governor Cuomo protects our health and our environment by keeping fracking out of the state.
A great day for New Yorkers and people across this country because today, New York has a ban on fracking.
I woke up this morning proud to be a New Yorker. A state in which we speak and government listens. They listen to the science and they made a decision based on the facts. So thank you, Governor Cuomo, for being such a leader.
My son was 8.
Speaking personally now, proud to have worked with every one of you. We were here in 2009 with Mark Ruffalo and Pete Seeger, which really the kind of kickoff of that campaign, and that infused the spirit of the grassroots part of this whole campaign and this whole coalition. And without that energy, grit, determination, and guts, we wouldn't be here today at all. This is a momentous victory. Don't forget that. And we beat an extraordinarily rich, extraordinarily powerful adversary. They're right now the same adversaries that are going to try to fight us as we move forward on renewables. They're trying to kill wind in Washington. They're trying to kill solar in Washington. They tried to kill solar in this state, but they failed. But you know something? We beat them then. We beat them yesterday. We'll beat them tomorrow as well.
Though it didn't come easily, New York is currently the only shale gas-bearing state with a ban on fracking. Looking back decades from now, the battle fought here may be remembered as the first great victory in the clean energy revolution. We all need and use energy, and options to fossil fuels are growing fast, including wind, solar, geothermal, and hydro. Iowa, for example, produces 27% of its energy from wind. California's electric car fleet is powered by energy from the sun. Towns from Texas to New York have gone off the grid, often because it makes economic sense as well as being good for the environment. More jobs are being created in renewable energy industries than in oil and gas extraction.
There'll be so much growth in clean and renewable energy, and the cost will come down as a result. There'll be a natural transition and elimination of the use of coal, oil, and gas. We do think that we can have a transition to 100% renewable energy for all purposes by 2050.
Renewables have been ready since the 1990s. I worked on a renewables program in the 1990s, and we called places like the Midwest the Saudi Arabia of wind power.
There's still a lot of basic research, fundamental physics, quantum mechanics going on in the solar area. Physics is on our side.
It's really time to come up with an economy that is the equivalent of the iPhone for our energy system, rather than keep relying on the old coal, oil, and gas, which is like the rotary dial phone.
I think there's nothing sacred. It's all going to change.
What's the process whereby we get from an economy that's 85% dependent on fossil fuels to an economy that's 85% dependent on solar and wind? See, right now it actually takes coal, oil, and natural gas to build solar panels and wind turbines. If we have the research and development, then over the course of a decade or 2 decades, we could build the industrial capacity to produce renewable energy without fossil fuels. Fossil fuels have become the basis for our entire way of life. And you don't make an overall energy transition without time and thought and investment. We've never had a major change in technology in this country without some government participation. Whether you're talking about the railroads, nuclear power, electrification, the internet, all of these things took massive government spending.
And the only way you can get that to happen is by working right on down from the top level to the bottom level.
People have to become involved and people have to become invested. It's almost like a test for us as American citizens.
How do we pass this test? And is there still time? Humans are frankly a rapacious species. Without the willpower to restrain our consumption, and without the wisdom to recognize that we are just one link in a global ecosystem, we may fail our greatest test: to survive. On September 21st, 2014, up to 400,000 people took to the streets of New York City to demand that our nation address climate change and lead with renewable energy solutions. What they took away from the ban on fracking in New York State was that when people organize, they can win. I was at that climate change march, and it opened my eyes, mind, and heart to see that incredible outpouring of human energy. The goal of the march was to draw global attention to the need to shift from a fossil fuel-driven economy to one that harnesses renewable energy sources. President Obama, you've done a lot during your time in office to influence our energy future. I know you understand that if we are to preserve the planet's climate for generations to come, the only path is to keep fossil fuels in the ground. You've tried to rein in carbon dioxide emissions from coal plants and stood up to climate deniers. At the same time, under your watch, fossil fuel extraction has grown increasingly extreme. Companies are drilling deeper, accidents more frequent, dangers constant. Vast acres of public lands in the deep sea are being drilled at all-time highs. In order to try and put coal out of business, you sided with natural gas. But the shale gas boom that many said would be a bridge to a new energy future has turned out to be nothing more than a dead end. By trying to please everyone, I'm afraid that your all-of-the-above energy policy has left many millions of Americans in harm's way. If we want to keep moving toward a future free of fossil fuels, then real change must come from ourselves and from our leaders. We must join together to shift the power and change our energy system. The time is now to repower our country with energy from the sun, the wind, and the water. The time for a clean energy revolution is now.